Argona Station was the epitome of interstellar diplomacy, a shining example of humanity's ability to work alongside the galaxy's diverse species. Orbiting Virilis Prime, it was a hub for trade, research, and cultural exchange. The station's sleek, metallic spires reached high into the void, a beacon of peace in the war-torn galaxy, until it wasn't. The attack came without warning. At first, it was a minor blip on the station's radar, a strange, unfamiliar signal. Within seconds, the blip became an entire fleet, the Cyrex Dominion, the galaxy's most feared and merciless empire, arrived like a storm. Their ships were a grotesque fusion of organic and mechanical, massive war vessels that pulsed with a sinister living energy. They descended on Argona Station like a plague, ripping through its defenses with ease. Commander Ilara Vasquez, stationed on the command deck of the station's central control hub, stared in disbelief at the live feeds showing Cyrex forces boarding the station. Her voice shook as she barked commands to the surviving crew. "Activate the emergency shields. Seal all compartments. Get everyone to the escape pods," she ordered, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew it was already too late. The station's shields flickered and died as Cyrex fighters darted through the gaps, their energy weapons cutting through metal like butter. In a final desperate attempt, she activated the station's distress beacon, transmitting the encoded message, "Initiate Crisis Protocol, LTCU." The words felt hollow. The protocol hadn't been used in centuries, not since the days of the first expansion, when humanity had feared being swallowed whole by alien empires. It was a contingency, a last-ditch effort, but the universe had long since assumed that such weapons were mere myths. Ilara's mind raced as she watched the destruction unfold on the screens in front of her. The Cyrex didn't just destroy, they consumed, as if each blow delivered by their biomechanical forces fed their insatiable hunger. The station's crew fought valiantly, but their efforts were futile against an enemy whose very existence seemed geared for annihilation. All around her, systems failed. The lights flickered and died. The screams of crew members echoed through the corridors, swallowed up by the oppressive hum of the Cyrex warships docking one after another, spilling their monstrous forces into every level of the station. With each passing minute, the station's defenses crumbled further, and Commander Vasquez's worst fears came to life. Outside the station's observation windows, the beauty of Virilis Prime seemed so far away, so irrelevant now. The lush green world, teeming with life, would soon fall under the shadow of the Cyrex as well. The alliance that humanity had fought so hard to build was crumbling under the weight of a single enemy. Then came the moment that would haunt Ilara for the rest of her life. A shadow passed across the viewports, a massive ship unlike anything she'd ever seen. The Cyrex flagship, the Ocelon, loomed large as it approached the station, preparing for docking. As the last of the escape pods launched into the void, Ilara's hand hovered over the final command button. The message had been sent. The protocol had been activated. She didn't know if it would work, but for the first time in hours, she allowed herself to hope. Then, the lights went out, and everything went dark. Beneath the frozen expanse of Antarctica, far from the prying eyes of the world, the old facility hummed to life. Its existence had been a carefully guarded secret, a relic of the early days of humanity's interstellar expansion. Designed as a last line of defense, the facility was buried deep beneath the ice, its purpose a memory locked away in the archives of history. As the distress signal from Argona Station reached the facility's buried sensors, ancient systems came online. They had waited for this moment for decades, even centuries. The encrypted transmission, though faint and heavily fragmented, sent a shockwave through the dormant servers. The signal had been received. The time had come. The first chamber to open revealed a long-forgotten nightmare. The cryogenic chambers, once pristine, were now showing signs of age. Battered steel and cracked glass, dim lights flickering to life. Inside, encased in the thick amber liquid, were the last remnants of the lethal Terrestrial Combatants unit. 12 of them, each a product of bioengineering and advanced military training, frozen in time for a war they thought had ended. The awakening was violent. The stasis pods hissed open, and tubes filled with greenish fluid drained, releasing the dormant warriors into the harsh cold air of the underground facility. Their bodies, designed for maximum physical efficiency and brutal strength, flexed and contracted, readjusting to the sensory overload of a world they hadn't known in centuries. Muscle fibers stretched, neural pathways reconnected, and a raw primal energy coursed through their veins. Sergeant Cal Juno, the leader of the LTCU program, was the first to stand. His body was a weapon, tall, broad-shouldered, with a face as hard as the ice that surrounded them. His mind, once sharp and calculating, was now flooded with memories, flashes of long-forgotten wars, lost comrades, and the brutal purpose of their creation. He felt the weight of the moment settle in. The Cyrex, the Protocol, Earth's last line of defense. The other LTCUs followed suit, disoriented at first, but quickly regaining their military instincts. Each of them, genetically enhanced and trained to withstand unimaginable levels of pain and stress, stood at attention. Their eyes, once cold and distant, now burned with purpose. Kel's voice was the first to cut through the eerie silence. His words were simple, direct, and heavy with the knowledge of their mission. "We're alive, and the war isn't over." Behind him, the shadowy figure of Lieutenant Erin Kessler, second in command, stepped forward. She was shorter than Kel, but no less deadly, her movements fluid and precise, as she recalibrated her enhanced cybernetic limbs. The technology embedded within her wasn't just a weapon. It was her second skin. "The Cyrex," Erin muttered, her voice low. "They're the ones who attacked Argona Station, aren't they?" Cale nodded grimly. "We're the countermeasure. We were never meant to be activated, but they forced our hand." The team's medical officer, Dr. Layla Voss, stepped up next, her eyes scanning the data on a nearby monitor. Her gaze was sharp, calculating. "It's been over 200 years. The protocol, it's still in place. But it's more than just a military strategy. We were built to be hunters." The realization hit them all at once. The LTCUs were not just a response to a singular threat. They were designed to be the ultimate warriors, capable of surviving in any environment, adapting to any combat situation. And the Cyrex were not just an alien empire. They were prey. Without further command, the LTCUs moved into action. The facility had been designed to train them, to prepare them for anything. And now, it was time. They had a mission, and it was clear. Virelis Prime was under siege, and humanity would not go quietly. As the team suited up in their combat exoskeletons, an extension of their bodies, Cale issued a final command. "Prepare for deployment. The Cyrex are about to learn why they never should have underestimated humanity." And with that, the LTCUs, humanity's deadliest secret, emerged from their underground crypt, ready to unleash a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The darkness of space was a cold, unforgiving expanse, but the LTCUs felt nothing but the fire of purpose burning in their chests as they descended toward Virelis Prime. The first wave of combatants dropped from their stealth fleet, their ships cloaked to avoid detection, cutting through the planet's atmosphere like arrows shot from the bow of humanity's last hope. Sergeant Cal Juno was the first to hit the surface, his boots slamming into the soil with a force that sent cracks through the ground. The environment was lush, with dense forests and sprawling hills, but it was also fraught with danger. The Cyrex had twisted the very planet into a war zone, transforming much of the surface into a hostile, alien nightmare. As Cal scanned his surroundings, he could feel the pulse of the planet. The Cyrex were here, and they were waiting. Each LTCU was deployed into a different region of the planet, tasked with different objectives. Some were ordered to sabotage Cyrex supply lines. Others, like Cal, were given the mission to destabilize key enemy strongholds. There was no room for failure. Not now. Kel's suit, enhanced with combat-ready exoskeletons and cloaking systems, adapted instantly to the hostile environment. His enhanced senses, built to operate in zero gravity, extreme pressure, and complete darkness, made the dense alien jungle seem almost comically slow to his trained eyes. He was a predator, and the Cyrex were his prey. The first contact was swift. Kale moved through the thick foliage, barely making a sound. His helmet's HUD tracked the movement of nearby Cyrex patrols. Large, biomechanical warriors, their bodies fused with machinery that hummed with an eerie mechanical pulse. They were patrolling a communications relay station, the beating heart of Cyrex control on this world. The Cyrex didn't see him coming. Kale burst from the shadows like a force of nature, his plasma blade flashing in the dim light. The first Cyrex fell without a sound, its chest torn open with surgical precision. His blade was followed by a burst of kinetic force from his gauntlet, sending another Cyrex flying into a nearby tree. It crumpled in a heap of sparks and shredded metal. In seconds, the first wave was down. Cal's heartbeat was steady, his mind locked into the rhythm of war. His HUD pinged with an alert. A Cyrex reinforcements were approaching. At least 24 of them, heavily armed, marching straight into his kill zone. Cal's mind worked like a machine, calculating angles, estimating trajectories. There was no hesitation, only efficiency. He leaped into the air, using his enhanced strength to propel himself into the heart of the enemy formation. His plasma blade sliced through another Cyrex soldier like paper. A well-placed grenade exploded, sending the remaining enemies scattering in all directions. Kel's team had been trained for this moment. The Cyrex were an infestation, and the LTCUs were the exterminators. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, Lieutenant Erin Kessler was carrying out her own mission. Her target, a heavily fortified Cyrex munitions facility deep in the mountains. Erin was a ghost, moving with the silence of death itself. Her enhanced vision allowed her to see through the infrared heat signatures of enemy guards, planning her attack with pinpoint accuracy. She used their own tactics against them, setting traps, ambushing supply convoys, and eradicating their ranks one by one. The Cyrex had no idea what was happening to them. As Kel finished off the last of the soldiers in his immediate area, his helmet's internal comms buzzed to life. It was Erin, her voice laced with cold satisfaction. Primary target destroyed. The munitions depot is no longer a problem. Kale allowed himself a brief smile. Good work, Lieutenant. Keep it up. We're just getting started. But even as Kale spoke, he knew the truth. This wasn't just a fight for territory. This was a war, and they had only just begun to show the Cyrex how truly dangerous humanity could be. The planet, once a symbol of peace, was now the battlefield for the most lethal warriors the universe had ever seen, and the LTCUs had just drawn first blood. The jungle of Varellus Prime had become an unrecognizable hellscape. What was once a lush, vibrant world was now twisted and scarred, the terrain rearranged to suit the Cyrex's ruthless ambitions. The air was thick with the scent of burning fuel and the ozone stench of plasma weapons as the LTCUs unleashed a war unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Cal Juno was no longer just a soldier. He was the architect of chaos. His mission was clear: bleed the Cyrex dry, sabotage their operations, and leave them scrambling for control. The first wave of pure destruction had been easy, a calculated slaughter that sent a powerful message. But now, the real war began. The Cyrex had underestimated the humans. They were expecting a conventional battle, forces meeting in open conflict. But the LTCUs weren't soldiers of tradition. They were hunters, predators, and this planet was their prey. Cal's squad moved with deadly precision through the underbrush. The exoskeletal suits they wore enhanced every aspect of their abilities: strength, speed, and stealth. Cal's helmet displayed data, his augmented vision locking onto a Cyrex supply convoy moving through the forest. The convoy, A series of massive armored vehicles transporting weapons and munitions was an obvious target. Kale activated his comms. "Erin, you're on the rear. Layla, take the sniper position. I'll handle the front." A sharp acknowledgement came from Lieutenant Erin Kessler, her voice cold and calculated. "Roger that. Let's make it quick." From the shadows, they struck. Layla Voss, the team's crack marksman, perched high in the trees, her rifle aimed at the convoy's leader. With a single, controlled breath, she squeezed the trigger, sending a high-caliber round through the heart of the lead vehicle. The explosion rocked the convoy, sending debris and metal fragments flying in every direction. The convoy was caught completely off guard. Kale was already in motion. His boots hit the ground hard, sending him sprinting toward the chaos. His plasma blade ignited with a hiss, its blade glowing a menacing red as he sliced through the first of the Cyrex soldiers. The roar of his assault rifle cut through the air as he mowed down another group of enemies. His tactics were unconventional. He didn't fight head-on. He maneuvered through the dense jungle, taking out enemies one by one, always staying one step ahead. Erin Kessler's voice crackled through the comms again. "Rear flank neutralized. No survivors." Kale allowed himself a rare moment of satisfaction. "Good. Keep it up." The battle raged on in the dense foliage, but Kale wasn't just focusing on killing. He was disorienting them, creating confusion. He planted mines in the roads, hacked into enemy communications to broadcast false orders, and used the planet's natural resources to trap and ambush his enemies. The Cyrex, though formidable, had never faced warfare like this. They were used to overwhelming force. Now, they were the ones being hunted. With each skirmish, the LTCUs dismantled the Cyrex war machine piece by piece. They sabotaged supply depots, destroyed transport hubs, and burned communication towers to the ground. Every action was designed not just to kill, but to leave the Cyrex in a constant state of uncertainty. Their command structure was crumbling, their forces disbanding in the face of an enemy that struck from the shadows and vanished without a trace. It wasn't just the Cyrex forces that were being thrown off balance. It was their very sense of superiority. The Cyrex had always believed they were invincible, but they were learning that humanity, with all its flaws and weaknesses, could adapt faster and fight smarter. And that was a terrifying realization. As Kel surveyed the battlefield, watching the chaos unfold around him, he knew this was only the beginning. The Cyrex had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated the LTCUs. And now, they would pay the price. He contacted his team. "Phase 2 starts now. We hit their command center. Full force." The war had become a game of attrition, and Kale was playing it better than anyone could have imagined. The LTCUs had unleashed a new kind of warfare, one that the Cyrex would never see coming. The hunt had begun, and there was no turning back. The forest was quiet now, almost eerily so. The usual cacophony of distant birds and wildlife had faded, replaced by the steady hum of Cyrex machinery and the occasional distant explosion as the LTCU's ambushes continued to wreak havoc. But Cal Juno knew that silence was a dangerous thing in warfare. The Cyrex were regrouping, consolidating their forces in preparation for a counterattack. But the LTCUs had other plans. The target, the Cyrex Command Center, a massive fortress buried deep within a mountain range that had been transformed into a high-tech, fortress-like installation. It was heavily fortified, its walls lined with thick, energy-resistant alloys. The Cyrex leadership, the architects of the invasion, were holed up there, orchestrating their operations across Varellus Prime. If Kale and his team could destroy the command center, the Cyrex would be crippled, their forces leaderless and vulnerable. The LTCUs knew this mission would be a gamble, one where even their enhanced abilities could be tested to the limit. But Kale was confident. They had already shown the Cyrex that they were not just invaders. They were hunters. And now, they would strike at the heart of their enemy. Kale and his team approached the base under the cover of darkness, their exoskeletons cloaked in the shadows. Every step was calculated, every move deliberate. Kel's mind raced, scanning the terrain for traps, enemy patrols, any sign of detection. He could feel the heat of the battle rising again, and the pulse of adrenaline in his veins. This was it. This was the decisive blow. "Position secured," came Erin's voice over the comms. "Ready to breach on your mark." Kale nodded to himself, his hand tightening on the hilt of his plasma blade. The base's outer defenses were formidable, but they were far from invincible. The LTCUs had spent weeks infiltrating the perimeter, mapping out the weak points, and now it was time to strike. Breaching in 3, 2, 1. A massive explosion rocked the entrance to the Cyrex command center, sending shockwaves through the compound. The ground trembled as the main gates buckled under the force, revealing the dark, cavernous interior of the command center. The air inside was thick with the hum of alien technology and the scent of burning circuitry. Kale was the first to charge in, his blade flashing like a streak of lightning, cutting down the first wave of Cyrex soldiers that tried to intercept them. Behind him, Erin and the rest of the team followed in a blur of motion, moving with lethal precision. Layla Voss' sniper rifle cracked in the distance, picking off Cyrex commanders who tried to rally their troops. Kel's heart pounded in his chest as he fought, but his mind remained cold, calculating. Each Cyrex soldier that fell to his blade was just another step closer to victory. But as they made their way deeper into the heart of the base, something changed. The command center's interior wasn't just a military stronghold, it was something more. The walls were lined with strange, organic matter, pulsating and shifting as though alive. Kel's HUD flickered as it attempted to analyze the data. "What the hell is this?" Layla muttered over the comms, her voice tinged with disbelief. "This isn't just a base, it's a hive." Kel's mind raced. The Cyrex weren't just invaders, they were something far more insidious. The organic elements of their ships, their warriors, their technology, it wasn't just built for warfare. It was alive. The Cyrex had engineered themselves to be one with the planet, to turn it into a breeding ground for their endless war machine. As they reached the inner sanctum of the command center, they found themselves face to face with the Cyrex High Command. A towering figure, its form a twisted fusion of metal and flesh, stood before them. It was their leader, the Harbinger, a being more machine than alien. The Harbinger's voice echoed in the chamber, low and terrifying. "You think you can destroy us? You are nothing more than a fleeting spark in the dark. The Cyrex are eternal. You cannot stop us." Kale grinned, his voice cutting through the Harbinger's monologue. "We're just getting started." Before the Cyrex could react, Kale launched himself forward, his plasma blade glowing brightly as he cut through the air toward the Harbinger. The battle had only just begun, and the true nature of the Cyrex threat was finally revealed. The Harbinger's metallic form loomed larger as Cal Juno closed the distance, his plasma blade arcing through the air with deadly intent. The figure before him, half organic, half machine, stood at least 2 meters tall, its body a grotesque amalgamation of bioengineered flesh and living technology. Its eyes were like pits of darkness, glowing with an unholy energy. And in that moment, Kale realized that this was no ordinary commander. This was the heart of the Cyrex, a being that embodied their entire philosophy, relentless, unstoppable, and utterly alien. The Harbinger's voice reverberated through the chamber, carrying with it the weight of centuries. "Foolish human, you dare challenge the pinnacle of evolution. You are no more than an insect beneath my heel." Kel's grip tightened around his plasma blade. The Harbinger's arrogance was palpable, but Kel had no intention of backing down. He lunged forward, his enhanced strength propelling him faster than the eye could follow. The plasma blade met resistance, sizzling against the Harbinger's exoskeleton, sending arcs of energy splintering across the room. The creature roared, a sound that echoed like 1,000 voices in agony, but it remained standing, unscathed. From behind him, Aaron Kessler's voice crackled in his earpiece. Kale, the structure's starting to buckle. We've triggered some kind of self-destruct protocol. You need to take it down now. Kale gritted his teeth. He knew the stakes. The command center wasn't just a key target. It was also the heart of the Cyrex's operation on Virelis Prime. If it was destroyed, the entire planet would fall into chaos. But if they failed to disable it, they'd all be trapped. Understood, Kale growled, his mind already calculating the next move. He couldn't afford to keep battling the Harbinger in close quarters. It was too powerful, too relentless. Instead, he leaped backward, creating distance between them, and activated his suit's cloaking device. For a brief moment, he vanished from sight. The Harbinger's glowing eyes scanned the room in confusion, its massive hands reaching out to swipe through the air. But it was too late. Kale was already on the move again. With lightning speed, Kale reappeared behind the Harbinger, this time targeting the weak points in its exoskeleton. The creature had relied too much on its strength, too little on defense. Kale's blade slid into the joint where the creature's organic body met the metal plating. Sparks exploded from the wound, and the Harbinger shrieked in fury. In the chaos, Lieutenant Erin's voice came through again. Kale, we can't hold the self-destruct off much longer. You need to take that thing out now. Kale nodded, pushing the panic down. This was the moment. He could feel the Cyrex's weaponry starting to overload in the background. Their entire infrastructure was collapsing. He couldn't wait any longer. Kale launched himself forward one final time, his plasma blade crackling with energy. The Harbinger turned just in time to catch a glimpse of the deadly strike coming for its head. Kale drove the blade into the creature's neck with a brutal thrust, cutting through the remaining armor and into the soft, organic core beneath. The Harbinger howled, its body convulsing violently as the plasma blade burned through its very essence. With a final, defiant roar, the Harbinger crumpled to the ground, its body falling apart like a broken machine. Its glowing eyes dimmed, the last vestiges of life fading from its synthetic form. Kale stood over the creature's remains, his breath heavy in his chest. He wiped the sweat from his brow, his pulse racing. The battle wasn't over, but this was a significant victory. The Cyrex leader was dead, and with it, the last symbol of their invincibility had crumbled. But then, just as Kale turned to call the team to regroup, a deep, unnatural hum filled the chamber. His HUD flickered, an emergency message flashing across his visor. Self-destruct sequence initiated. 10 minutes until total annihilation. A chill ran down Cal's spine. They hadn't just triggered the self-destruct. It was worse. The Cyrex had set the entire planet to burn. Erin, Layla, get the extraction coordinates. We're not leaving without everyone. Erin's voice was taut with urgency. Roger that, but we need to move now, Kale. We've only got minutes. The clock was ticking, and Kale knew they had only one shot to make it out alive. As the walls of the command center began to tremble and crack, he ordered his team to fall back. The mission had been a success, but now survival was the only thing that mattered. The LTCUs had taken the heart of the Cyrex Empire, but would they survive the fallout? The once imposing Cyrex command center was now a ticking time bomb. The walls were cracking, the ground trembling beneath their boots, and a deep guttural rumble reverberated through the air as the self-destruct countdown echoed in their earpieces. Kale Juno's heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was focused. No distractions, no hesitation. They had 10 minutes to escape, and the planet's surface was falling apart around them. Move, move, move. Kale barked, sprinting toward the nearest exit. His squad was already behind him, their enhanced suits making them faster than the average soldier. But even with their upgrades, the sheer scale of the destruction and the closing walls of the base meant there was no time to waste. Erin Kessler was already ahead, her keen instincts guiding her through the labyrinthine corridors of the command center. Extraction points 5 clicks away. We can make it if we push it. Layla, you're on point. Kale, cover our 6. Layla Voss, the team's sniper, nodded sharply, her rifle slung over her back as she readied a grenade. On it. The corridors were a war zone now. The walls trembled with each passing second, sending debris crashing down. Blasts from the command center's core lit up the corridors in a hellish glow. The heat was unbearable, and the air smelled of burning metal and scorched flesh. The Cyrex had no intention of letting them leave alive. Behind them, the echoes of the Harbinger's death still lingered. The central core of the command center was now on full lockdown, the energy reserves cycling into overload. The countdown was relentless. 8 minutes, 30 seconds, 8 minutes, 25 seconds. Kale felt the pressure, but there was no time for doubt. The mission had been a success. They had crippled the Cyrex leadership, but now survival was the only thing that mattered. As they reached the outer perimeter of the base, Kale looked back once more. The command center had started to collapse inward, its towering spires buckling under the weight of the self-destruct sequence. They needed to move faster. A sudden explosion shook the ground beneath their feet. A wave of heat rushed through the corridor as an entire section of the facility caved in. Kale barely had time to react as the debris rained down. He instinctively reached out, grabbing Layla and pulling her behind a wall of fallen metal, just as a blast wave surged past them. "Status," Kale shouted over the comms. Erin's voice came through, strained but calm. "We're clear for now, but we can't afford to stop. Get your asses moving." The countdown was down to 7 minutes, and the air was thick with the smell of burning. Kale turned to check on Layla. Her helmet had cracked from the impact, but she was still conscious, her eyes burning with resolve. She grinned through the pain. "I'm fine. Let's get out of here." The sound of enemy forces filtering in from the rear was enough to fuel their urgency. The Cyrex had left behind automated defenses in a desperate attempt to slow the LTCUs down. Erin fired a salvo from her plasma rifle, knocking down a line of Cyrex drones that were closing in on them. But the minutes were ticking away, and the walls were coming down faster than they could run. Kale motioned to his team. "One click to go. We're taking the shortcut." Erin raised an eyebrow. "You mean that shortcut?" Kale didn't hesitate. "It's the only way. If we don't make it there in 2 minutes, we won't make it out." The shortcut was a narrow service tunnel, half collapsed, but still passable. They ducked through the jagged opening, their suits scraping against the rough, crumbling walls. The heat was unbearable now, the air thick with dust and ash. The tunnel trembled as if it could collapse at any moment, but they pressed on. Every step was a gamble. Every second a countdown they couldn't escape. Kale checked his HUD. 4 minutes remaining. The narrow tunnel opened into a cavernous room, an airlock that would take them to the surface. But as they approached, a blast of static filled their earpieces. "This is Extraction Team Alpha," came a distorted voice over the comms. "We're 5 minutes out. You'll have to hold position until we can secure the area." Kale felt his pulse quicken. 5 minutes. They didn't have that long. "Get us out of here now." Kale barked into his comms, his voice sharp with urgency. But the seconds continued to slip away. With no time left to waste, Kale made a snap decision. "Layla, get the door open. Erin, clear the area. I'll set the charge." The room around them was full of twisting metal and flickering lights. The self-destruct countdown had reached 2 minutes. Kale planted a series of charges on the door's locking mechanism. The device beeped as it activated. They were running out of time. "Get ready," Kale shouted. As the charges clicked into place, the blast door finally gave way. Just as the pressure wave began to push outward, the team barreled through, racing toward the extraction point, their only hope a fast, uncertain escape from a collapsing world. The airlock hissed as the blast door buckled under the force of the charges Cal had planted. A rush of cool air met their faces, and the team flooded through, their exoskeletons carrying them faster than any normal soldier could move. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they sprinted toward the extraction point. The countdown echoed in their helmets. 2 minutes, 10 seconds, 2 minutes. Cal's heart raced. The chaos of the command center collapsing behind them was a constant hum in the background, a reminder that every second was a precious gift. They were close. They could make it. But then, another explosion shook the ground, sending tremors through the cavern. Cal stumbled for a moment, but quickly regained his balance. A plume of dust erupted from behind them, and for a split second, Cal thought he saw the base's outer shell starting to disintegrate. The pressure wave was coming, and it was coming fast. "Air in, Layla," Cal shouted. "Pick up the pace. The tunnel's closing." Erin's voice crackled through his comms, strained but determined. "We're almost there. Another 50 meters. Hold on." Layla Voss, still clutching her cracked rifle, shot Cal a look. "This is too close. We won't make it if that blast hits us now." Cal's eyes narrowed as he calculated their route. They had no choice but to push forward and hope the extraction team arrived in time. The base was coming down in chunks, its foundations crumbling. The entire mountain range was about to be leveled, and they were trapped inside it. 50 meters, 10 seconds. Erin shouted again. "Get ready." The air grew hotter, the heat from the explosion wave creeping closer. The tunnel began to collapse around them, chunks of concrete and metal falling like rain. Cal's mind raced as they neared the open field outside the collapsing facility. He could see the extraction shuttle now, a sleek, dark shape in the distance, hovering just above the ground. But they were still too far. They wouldn't make it in time. 1 minute remaining. "Move," Cal roared, his voice a primal yell. He powered through the last stretch of the tunnel, taking in the world around him. The sky above was smeared with orange and red, the last remnants of the Cyrex command center being obliterated by its own self-destruct. The ground shook with the force of the explosions, and the temperature spiked. Then, just as Cal reached the edge of the explosion radius, the airlock to the extraction shuttle slid open, revealing their salvation. The shuttle was hovering, waiting, only 100 meters away, but it might as well have been 1,000 in the face of the oncoming destruction. "Go, go, go," Cal yelled as he sprinted the final stretch. The rest of the team followed, their limbs powered by the will to survive. Layla was the first to leap onto the shuttle, followed closely by Erin. Cal was right behind them, pushing himself to his limits. Behind him, the explosion wave was almost on top of them. The ground cracked, and the shockwave lifted them off their feet, throwing them into the air. Cal's vision blurred as the blast hit, the shock of it reverberating through his entire body. He felt the burn of the energy wave, but he didn't stop running. His legs carried him the final meters to the shuttle, and with a desperate leap, he dove into the open hatch. The shuttle's doors slammed shut just as the ground beneath them cracked wide open. A massive column of fire and smoke erupted from the command center, engulfing everything in its wake. The shockwave slammed into the shuttle, but the hull held steady. The craft rose, lifting them away from the chaos below. As the shuttle ascended, Cal collapsed into a seat, breathing hard, his mind still racing. He could hear the rest of his team panting, their suits whirring as they processed the mission's completion. "We made it," Erin said, her voice still shaking. "But we didn't just survive. We won." Cal looked out the shuttle's viewport, the surface of Varellus Prime falling away beneath them. The Cyrex were crippled. Their leadership was dead. Their command center was nothing but rubble. The planet they had once believed was theirs now lay in ruins, and humanity had delivered a blow they would never recover from. But Cal knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The Cyrex might have been defeated on Varellus Prime, but their war machine was vast. They would rebuild, they would return. And when they did, humanity would be ready. The LTCUs had proven one thing beyond a shadow of a doubt. They were hunters, and no predator was safe. The shuttle broke through the atmosphere, heading for the distant stars. the LTCUs had survived the impossible.